Hey guys, hey, this is Anne Marie, the anti-HR lady, and welcome to the November edition of Can HR Do That? I wasn't live last month, so I wanted to make sure that I did this this month. And you guys, I'm going to go through the ground rules and everything before we get started. But first, welcome to the Anti HR channel and the Anti HR community. On this channel, I try to educate my subscribers and my viewers about their workplace rights, especially those of us who are Black people and Black women. I want us to know about our workplace rights and understand how to assert those rights if they are violated. So, if that's of interest to you, welcome to the channel. Welcome to this live. If you enjoy this video, please take a moment, subscribe, like, leave a comment, but please make sure it's constructive. And now, welcome to November's anti HR edition of Can HR Do That? So, um, what we are doing on here is I allow people to post some questions about HR related issues and ask whether HR can do something that HR has done. And then I will answer their question from my perspective based on my 20 plus years of working in HR as an HR executive, HR manager, from the bottom all the way to the top. I've done everything related to HR. And so I will rely on that. I am also a licensed attorney, but this is not legal advice. If you have questions from a legal perspective, please consult an attorney in your jurisdiction. Okay. So the way that people submit questions is that when I make the announcement about the live, they can post their questions under the announcement. That allows me time to look at the questions and determine which questions are appropriate for me to answer, which questions are not. I do not answer questions in real time during the live because I prefer to vet the questions before I answer them. So I have 8 questions that I'm going to go through on this live, and I'm going to answer them. And I hope that the answers that I provide will be helpful, not just to the person that asked the question, but to those of you who are watching this live or who are going to watch it later um, when I post it on my channel. So, first question is, can HR, after conversing several months via email, phone calls, and WebEx meetings with the assigned HR person to modify and approve reasonable accommodation, can they all of a sudden stop replying to emails once a supervisor defies the approved reasonable accommodation? There was a verbally approved clarification that the supervisor said was not doable. I couldn't get anyone in HR to discuss it via email or internal chat after my meeting with the supervisor to show written proof to the supervisor that it was approved. Okay. So this person is asking a question about a reasonable accommodation that they requested and was approved. And apparently the supervisor does not wish to conform with the approved reasonable accommodation. And now HR, she's saying, is going radio silent. And she's asking whether HR can do that. So one of the things I'm going to say at the top of this is there's what HR can do, and then there's what HR should do and what HR shouldn't do. And all of those 3 things are often not the same thing. Now, in this particular situation, and I'm just going to base it on what you have provided. I'm not going to try to, you know, imply anything else beyond what you've said here. But, as I explained in videos before, the law under the Americans Disability Act, ADA, requires that employers provide reasonable, quote, reasonable accommodations for certain disabilities. And they're all outlined in the act. And so the reason that employers even entertain requests for reasonable accommodations is because of this law. They're not doing it because they want to. They're not doing it because they like to. They're doing it because it's required by law. And then some states also have laws related to reasonable accommodations that may go beyond what the federal law requires. Okay. So usually in situations like this where you go to HR and there's usually a policy and you have to go through a process, some employers outsource the approval and disapproval of requests for reasonable accommodations, and some of them handle it in-house. But in a situation where HR has approved this, then your supervisor has defied it. Then when you went back to HR, you couldn't get an answer. It means that somebody has done something wrong and HR no longer wants to speak to you by email or internal chat because they don't want a paper trail. Okay. So even though you have the written proof, you're saying when you presented it, your employer refused to comply with it. And then when you try to go back to HR to get someone to discuss it, no one is responding to you. What I recommend you do is that you write a formal communication, like a memo or an email. You send it to the person in HR, but you also copy their manager, copy your supervisor's manager, assuming they have one. Bring other people into the chat, okay? And make sure that you point out that the employer's failure to comply may be violation of the American with Disabilities Act. That is likely to get you a response. Okay. So it's going to be very important that you make it clear when you follow up that you are seeking to ensure that the employer not only complies with their own policies, but that they comply with the law, right? And that if you have tried, and you want to make sure that you include in there everything that has happened up to that point, that you had it approved, that that your supervisor is refusing to comply, et cetera, and then and then remind them that it is their responsibility to ensure that the company complies not only with their policies but with the law. Now, understand that this may not make you the most popular person at work, but that's not the point. The point is to make sure that they follow up. Now, if they do anything retaliatory after you send that communication, then you might want to book a discovery call with me to have a conversation about what you should do next. But I definitely think that what you're going to need to do is not just say, "Oh, my supervisor is not cooperating," or "Oh, my supervisor is ignoring me," but say, remind them they have a policy, remind them that there's a law, remind them that if they don't follow it, they could be in trouble, right? And then give them an opportunity to respond, and also ask them to respond by a specific date and time. Send the information not by chat, but by email, and don't just send it to the person in HR. Send it to an actual human being and copy the person who is oversees HR as well as the person who is your supervisor's supervisor. That's my suggestion relevant to that. And my answer is, can they do it? Yes. But should they be ignoring you? No, because they could get into trouble if they're in fact violating um, the ADA. Okay. The next question. Can HR refuse to share information in your employee file? Short answer is yes, depending on what the HR information is, which I have no way of knowing. But depending on what it is, they can refuse to give it to you. If your company has an employee handbook, and as I always say, if you guys have employee policies, whether it's given to you as a handbook, whether it's posted on a portal, make it your business to download a copy of it, keep it with you at home, and read it and know what it says. Right? Now, if they have anything in your handbook that advises about how you might see your employee records or review your employee records, then it might be very problematic if they're refusing to let you see your employee records. But if you have access to an online portal or something like that, they may feel like everything that you need to see relevant to your employee records are already available. So it would be more useful to know what exactly it is that you are trying to see that you are unable to see, because there are certain things that they have to allow you to have access to, and then there are things that they may not have to allow you to have access to. So it really depends on what it is that you want to see. Okay. Hi there. Someone has entered the chat. Hi there. Nice to meet you. Thanks for being here. Next question. Can HR fail to report a valid workers' compensation claim at the time of the incident and then file it later, 2 years later? That's a really interesting question, and I would think that that's odd that an HR department, if they have awareness of a valid workers' comp claim, would wait 2 years to file it. So I would advise that you probably get some legal advice from an attorney that is well versed in workers' comp in your state or jurisdiction, because that doesn't sound right to me. If you filed it validly, if you made them aware, if you reported it validly, to the place that you were supposed to report it, to the department that you were supposed to report it, and they waited a whole 2 years before they filed it, that doesn't sound right. If that's what you're saying, right? So the question is, can they fail to report? HR departments can fail to do a lot of things. Should they do that? No, they shouldn't. But I would need a whole lot more information. And if what you're saying is that you filed a report validly, you sent it to the right place, you brought it to the attention of the right people, and it took them 2 years to file it, I would say that you should probably consult an employment and labor attorney in your state and in your city to ask them some questions about it. See if you can get a free consultation and ask that very question because it doesn't sound correct to me. That's not usually how that should work. Okay. Question number 4. Can a layoff severance amount be negotiated after the severance is offered to the employee? So the question is, can you negotiate layoff severance? My short answer is you can negotiate anything or you can attempt to negotiate anything. But the likelihood that your employer is going to be willing to negotiate a layoff severance is very, very low. Simply because the reason that employers will provide severances that are not related to layoffs is often because they have legal exposure. It's actually the only reason they'll do it. Right? I feel pretty confident saying that. The only reason that they will do it beyond outside of needing to lay people off to save money or something else related to their bottom line is because they have exposure and they want to protect themselves from that exposure. And so they will give the employee money in exchange for an agreement from the employee to not come back later and sue them. That's what severance payments are for. If an employer is laying you off for reasons that have nothing to do with illegal wrongdoing that are more financial related, they are less likely to agree to negotiate the amount of severance because from many perspectives, usually in HR, the usual concern is if they agree to change the amount they're paying you, especially if they say we're going to pay everybody, we're laying everybody off in 60 days and we are going to give everyone a flat payment of 2 months pay, 2 months of health insurance and employment placement services, right? If you come in and you accept or well, let's just say it's a layoff, so they're not even going to let you come in and accept it. Sometimes they do buyouts, you get to voluntarily leave with similar offer. But if they say we're laying everybody off, we're laying 100 people and if you get this notification you're one of these people, right? They're likely not going to negotiate simply because if they offer you something different, then they would then feel like they have to offer everybody else something different. So usually when it's a layoff, which is usually related to some kind of financial issue or something in the company, everybody gets the same thing. And they usually still want you to sign an agreement, which is why I always tell people don't sign anything without getting advice, right? Now, there's certain terms you might push back on relevant to, what people say about you after you leave. There's certain legal terms, and I'm not going to get into them here, that you might still be able to negotiate, but the amount of payment is usually not negotiable, right? Because as I said, they don't want to negotiate the amount they're going to pay one employee over another because then they don't want to have to open up conversations with every employee that's getting laid off. Now, if you feel that you have been selected for a layoff because you raised a action of your employee that might have been illegal, for example, discrimination, then that's a different conversation. And I would, recommend that you have a discovery call with me or that you get other advice before you signed. But if it's just a straight layoff that doesn't have any of those kinds of implications of any wrongdoing or unlawful behavior by your employer that predated the decision to lay you off in particular, then it's probably not negotiable. But as I've explained before, in many circumstances, employees may complain about wrongdoing by their employer. It could be a whistleblowing issue, it could be discrimination, it could be something else. And then the employer doesn't really do anything and doesn't say anything for a while. And then 3 months later, they are informed, along with several other employees, that they're being laid off. There's a high likelihood that you're selected for layoff because you made the complaint. But by lumping you in with a group of other people for layoffs that are for financial reasons, employees will try to protect themselves from claims of discrimination by putting people who have raised complaints about wrongful behavior into the same bucket with the layoff people. It is a thing that some of them do. So if you believe that that is happening, then I would say do not sign anything until you get some advice, right? But if you are just simply notified that the company is having some financial issues and has decided that it's going to lay off this percentage and you get picked as a number in the percentage of people that are being laid off, it's usually not something that's going to be negotiated by the employer. So I hope that answered that question. Um, Next question. Can HR refuse a formal outside investigation for a serious complaint like discrimination or retaliation and just do their own internal review? Yes. The short answer to that question is yes. So the person's asking whether their HR department can refuse to use a third party investigator or bring somebody from the outside to do an investigation and instead do it internally. That's what I'm understanding the question to be. And the short answer to that is yes. And it's pretty standard practice. Like larger corporations may have attorneys on retainer and or other consultants on retainer to do these kinds of things, but um most medium to small companies usually conduct these investigations themselves. And here's the thing. Hi, Dee Dee. Nice to see you. Or nice to see your greeting because I actually can't see you. But here's the thing. Whether or not it's funny, someone you asked this question because I actually spoke to someone in Discovery Call today, and they were telling me about their company hiring an outside firm to undertake an investigation of discrimination claims, and the outside firm came back and gave them the same finding that the internal investigator would have given them. Okay, it doesn't matter. Generally speaking, when organizations, companies hire external parties to conduct investigations, they don't have any expectation that the company is going to come back and tell you anything other than what they want you to be told. And when I say you, I mean the employee. So it doesn't matter whether, they hire Jesus himself. If they're being paid, if the third party is being paid, it is unlikely that you are going to ever find out what they really found. I hate to have to break it to you, but that's the way it goes. So whether they hire an outside investigation or whether they have your HR director undertake the investigation, the outcome is likely to be the same, right? And there's some cases in public, usually when something has gone public, um, and even then, they come back with watered down findings. I mean, look at the January 6th investigation in Congress. It all works the same way. The wrongdoer, depending on who they are and how much power they are and how much influence they are, walks away unscathed, and the person who brought the complaint walks away feeling like crap. And if they have a legal action, they go settle it quietly, and that's the end of it. But almost never will an outside investigation or an internal investigation result in the employer saying, "You got us, you were right, we were discriminating, mea culpa, we're so sorry," and we throw ourselves at your mercy. It doesn't work that way. So you should have no expectation that it's going to work that way. But they like to often feel like it's going to give the outcome more, um what's the word that I'm looking for? Basically that you, and more importantly other people in the company, will feel more confidence in what they tell them if they say they used an outside party. But the reality is that if the employer is cutting the check to the outside party, whose version of the events do you think the outside party is more likely to side with? I mean, that's the truth. And a lot of times they'll say they're using an outside party, but it's some party that their law firm recommended, or it's their law firm, or it's someone associated with their law firm, or it's an HR consultant that used to work for somebody else that works in the company. It's always, they may say it's an outside party with no connection to the company, but that's almost never true. And even if it is true, and the company comes in and does a thorough investigation and finds wrongdoing on the part of the employer, you as the employee are never going to get a copy of that report, and they're never going to tell you what they found. They're always going to say that they didn't find evidence to support your claim. They're not going to say they didn't find anything. They're going to claim they didn't find evidence to support your claim. And so whether or not the formal investigation is done internally or externally, the outcome is likely to be the same. So if you feel like you have your facts on your side and you have documented, then you have to push back on the process. You can't just accept it, right? You don't just accept what they say, because you have to understand that they are never going to come and tell you that you're correct. That's just not the way it works. So don't feel any kind of way when they say they're having an investigation. They're having an investigation so they can put something in their file and say they had an investigation. In case this stuff comes back on them, they will want to say, well, we hired such and such, or we had our HR director who has so many years of experience conducting investigation. And surprise, surprise, they concluded that we didn't do anything wrong. So basically, you're hiring the fox to determine whether he broke into the hen house. How do you think that's going to work out? Right. So just don't expect that, whether it's internal or, external, if they're being paid by your employer, I would say you cannot trust anything that they tell you, and you can't trust that process. The only thing that gets you to the truth is you going after it on your own and negotiating your way out of these situations yourself. But if you are seeking validation of your claims from your employer, you're never going to get it. And a lot of people, unfortunately, are seeking that. And I just think that's a fool's errand. If it walks like a discrimination, it talks like discrimination, it acts like discrimination, it's discrimination. And you don't need anybody to validate for that for you. Your documentation and your facts will validate that for you. But if you're waiting for somebody in HR to tell you that, and you're waiting for somebody who's being paid by HR to tell you that, you're never going to be happy, because that's never going to happen. Okay. Next question. Hi there, Kimoy. Who else do I see in here? Enchanted Rockview, it's all about appearances. That's correct. It's just about appearances, and not even just appearances. It's about paper in a file, right? So that they can say they investigated the claim and they absolve themselves of any responsibility and of any wrongdoing. But that's all it is. Investigations are not to find the truth. They are to basically cover your employee's ass. All right. So, next question. Can HR dismiss a claim of racial discrimination by stating the perpetrator is also a member of a minority group? Can they do it? Yes. Should they do it? No. Right? Very, very dumb. But a lot of HR department people are not very smart. Right? I hate to say it, but a lot of them are not very smart. Any HR person that tells you that your claim is invalid simply because the perpetrator of the action is the same race as you or another ethnic minority group is an idiot, as they say in Ireland. An idiot. It's like my favorite term right now since I got back from Ireland. But that's what they are. Because any HR person worth their salt knows that same race discrimination is a thing that people from different ethnic minority groups can discriminate against each other, and they can also discriminate against people who are not part of their ethnic minority group, even though the person is a member of another ethnic minority group. There's actually a fact sheet. The EEOC has fact sheets that they put out, and if you Google same race discrimination, the EEOC has a fact sheet that speaks to the fact that individuals of the same race can discriminate against each other. My first time that I ever got paid out by an employer was because of same race discrimination. So I'm here to tell you that not only is it a thing, but that employers will pay you. Okay? But it's harder. You have to have your facts together and your documentation. In my case, this person was seeking to take away part of my job and give it to a white woman. A black woman was doing this, and give it to a white woman who was clearly less qualified, less educated than me, simply because she was friends with this white woman and liked her better than me. Okay. She was engaging in differential treatment to the benefit of this white woman, which was discriminatory towards me. I was able to document that, prove it, and raise my concerns and get paid so I could leave. Okay. So it's not the easiest thing. And at first, there were people in management who wanted to dismiss what I was saying. But luckily for me, I was in law school. And so I knew how to raise my concerns and raise my arguments. But it is very important to be able to really show and document the different treatment that you're experiencing at the hand of this person, even if they are the same race as you. Okay, but you can't just say this person is discriminating against me. You have to be very concrete when the person is, well, anytime you raise discrimination, you need to be concrete, but even more so when the person is the same race as you. But if the person is a member of another ethnic group, the same rules apply. Just because, say, they're Asian and you're Black, Asian people notoriously discriminate against Black people in the workplace and everywhere else. So all you need to prove it is what the behavior that they exhibited was in fact discriminatory, right? But the fact that they're Asian and you're Black is immaterial. It's the discriminatory. It's always what someone did and why someone did it. You got to show the what and the why, right? Not the who, the what and the why, right? Then you talk about the who. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of times we lead with who and not with what. So you talk about what, and then you get to why as quickly as possible. You want to show not just what they did, but why they did it, and that the why of the question is discriminatory, right? So that's my answer. Can they dismiss it? Well, people do all kinds of things, but should they do it? No, they shouldn't, right? And so if you believe that you can prove that this person engaged in treatment that was discriminatory towards you, then you need to show your documentation, right? But you need to make sure it's concrete. And so it can't just be they're mean to me. You need to show that they are treating you differently than other people in your workplace and that it is detrimental, right? So how are they treating the Kevins and the Karens and the Brats? Even if they're the same race as you, if they have a way of beating up on all the Black people on the team and letting the white people on the team do whatever they want, that's discrimination. And it doesn't matter if they're Black. It doesn't matter if they're Asian. It's still discrimination. Okay. Next question. Can HR order you to an interrogation about an incident, advising you that you could be fired or suspended depending on the outcome, and then tell you the matter is resolved without any details? Yes, they can. Should they? No. But do they? Yes. Probably because after they completed looking into it, they've not only found out that you were wrong, but they probably found out somebody else that you weren't wrong. They probably found out somebody else is wrong and that they have exposure. And so a lot of times HR departments, they start looking into things, they find things that could be very problematic for them, and then they just drop it and they think the employee is going to just forget about it, right? And so yeah, they can call you in, ask you questions, and then never come back about it. And it does happen. Is should they handle things that way? No. But HR departments are notorious for being unprofessional and handling things in the wrong way, right? Now, if you feel that you were treated in some type of discriminatory manner in this process, then you need to document it and then you might be able to raise some concerns. But can they just bring you in, ask you questions and then walk away and never bring it up again? Yeah, yes, they can and they do, unfortunately, right? Some of them do that. Um, Last question. Let me just look at the comments real quick. Well, I'm not sure what this discussion is, so I'm not going to jump in. Um, anyway, and as I said, I'm not answering live questions. I'm answering questions that have already been submitted. So if you have a question, I suggest you plan to hold on to it for the next session, which I'm trying to try to do one in December, but I can't promise. I'm going to try um, to do one in December before I take my holiday break. So, last question. Does HR ever replace false reports with corrected information? How do they decide what's wrong or right in a matter? Well, does HR ever replace false reports with a correct information? Yes. That's the short answer. Do they change stuff in people's files? Yes. Do they put things in people's files that people don't know is there? Yes. Which is why I suggest if you are able to get access to your files, if you can get to see your files, you should, right? And most files now are electronic, and often they'll give you access to certain things, and then other things they'll have, and you don't even know till later. right? HR departments, people still operate with this idea that these are highly ethical people. They're not. They're just regular people like anybody. And their primary purpose, as I say to you guys all the time, HR is a risk management apparatus of an organization. They are there to manage risk. And the primary risk to an organization is you, the employees, right? Either you doing something on a job you don't have no business doing and getting them into trouble, or you recognizing that they're doing something they don't have any business doing and getting them into trouble. You are their primary risk, dear employee. So, and they are there to control and limit that risk for the management of the company. They are not there to protect you. So, they will do all kinds of things in pursuit of the goal of protecting management. And so there is no right or wrong. How do they decide what's right or wrong? They don't decide what's right or wrong. They decide what is in the company's interest or not in the company's interest. Stop thinking about it like right or wrong. They don't think about it that way. And some people honestly do think they're in there trying to do the best thing. And then they find out that that's really not why they're there, right? When you go in early in your career, when I was in my 20s, I first started doing HR work when I was like 25 or 26, right? In a junior role. And I really thought I was doing the Lord's work. I was up here trying to help people. But I was very disabused of that notion within a couple of years of doing it. I just learned that that's not what I was there for. And I learned because I listened and I observed, and then I went into law school and I really saw how many things my employer was doing wrong when I went to law school. And then I went on to another job and I found out even more things, right? But HR's role is not right or wrong. It's to manage risk. Okay? And you can do that in ways that are helpful to employees, and you can do that in ways that are not helpful to employees. But your first and foremost, your responsibility is to manage risk. Okay? That's it and that's all. Thank you. I like my glasses. I do. They're great. I just got them. I like them most because now I can see better because I had to get my eyes checked again. Um, and now I can see better. My HR is creating strife between us little people. Oh yeah, well, I mean, and I don't even necessarily think that all HR people go in feeling I'm gonna just go in here and treat all these people like crap. It's a thing that sneaks up on you, and the higher in you go, the more it does because people ask you to do things or imply that you should do things that right, aren't necessarily the right thing, but it's the right thing for the company or the for that individual manager or president or vice president, right? And so, there's a lot of collusion between, the president, the CEO, the COO, the the CFO, right? And so all of those things are in service of keeping the company running, financially solvent, those kinds of stuff. So decisions about laying people off and a lot of these things are made for the company because it's good for the company. I worked at a company early in my career where every year when they had a shortfall, they would just lay people off. And I remember always thinking, shouldn't the CFO get fired if the only way they can balance their budget is to lay people off? But I was just a little grunt person, but even I saw that that was not a good way to do business. But that's what these people were doing because they weren't managing the finances properly, right? And then when things hit the fan, they would just lay people off. It was terrible, right? And so it's like, companies make decisions and they're not necessarily the right decision, but they do it in the interest of whatever they think is for the company. It's not about the individual employees that work in there. So you can't go in there and have this large loyalty to these people. You go in there and you do your job that they hired you to do and that they are paying you to do. But going above and beyond, especially in these days and times, is just not to your benefit because the minute they need to cut, a half a million or a quarter of a million or whatever, they will not hesitate, especially these for-profit companies, but the nonprofits aren't any better either. But they will not hesitate to walk you right out the door and act like it was your fault. Okay? So those are the 8 questions that came in. They're all really good questions. So thank you to the people who submitted them. Thank you to those of you who are in here live right now. I hope that listening to this little short session and listen me answer these questions were helpful to you. Um, it's just, unfortunately, it's a jungle out there, and things, especially in workplaces in the United States, I don't think they're going to get better in the short term. Um, I don't see things getting better because I feel a lot of employers are going to feel um, that they can get away with things that they can do whatever they want. So I mean, I'm just saying, get your notebooks out, have them ready, document your workplace, pay attention to what's going on. I'm definitely going to be, paying close attention to, what's going on in terms of the Department of Labor, EEOC, appropriations, funding for different departments, and so on in the next several months, because I'm very interested to see where the attacks are going to come from and what departments are going to get attacked. But it's going to be departments that are about the business of trying to protect and help workers, because the oligarchs are in control now, completely in control. And it's my opinion, and this is just my opinion, that their long game is to turn us all into little slaves. I mean, I don't know if any of you have ever watched the TV show Altered Carbon. It's on Netflix. Season 1. I didn't particularly care for season 2, but season 1. If you've never watched Altered Carbon, I would highly recommend that you watch it. It's a very like dystopian sci-fi, but I remember watching it the first time I watched it and thinking, this could literally end up being what our lives are like. And basically in the TV show, the really wealthy have moved to a planet above Earth, right? And the whole of Earth is like a big old slum. And they live above Earth, and they just come down whenever they feel like it to, give money, give food to the poor. In one scene, the guy was going into the slums and whatever, but they're living literally above it all in the mess that they created and then left and moved to another planet. And I remember watching, and then there are other premises on it that I think are very fascinating as well. But I really feel like if some of these people could get away with it, they would like to have many of us back on the proverbial plantation. And they're clearing out one group of people, and I really think that some of them think they're going to put some of us back in the factories to pick the shrimp and clean the chickens and pick the strawberries and harvest the tomatoes and all these kinds of things. I think these are some of them black jobs they were talking about. And so we need to take heed and pay attention to what's going on, right? Don't get in other people's business and other people's fight, but do pay attention to your own business, because somebody's going to have to do these jobs, because they're not about to give up their wealth. They're going to stay rich and be richer by the time in the next year, 2, 3, 4 years or more. So you have to understand that the oligarchs have taken control, and their only interest is in how much money they can squeeze out of the rest of us and how much they can squeeze us, period. And they love to talk about deregulation and how much it's taking it's interfering with enterprise and entrepreneurship and BS. They just don't want any rules because they just want to do whatever they want. They want to do whatever they want to workers, but they still need you as a worker, and people need to remember that, right? And you can control how much you spend, where you spend it, right? Because that is what's driving a lot of this, is they just want to make more and more and more, but they want everyone else to have less and less and less. And that's just my personal opinion, right? But when you look at what is going on and some of the comments that you're hearing, you have to realize what is at the root of some of this stuff. So you can't ever think that human resources is going to look out for you, because that's not their job, especially not now. And I don't care what nice video they make when you came in the door and they did the orientation and they came in and told you how happy that you're there and showed you the nice video. None of that doesn't mean anything. I hate to have to say it, but it's true. It doesn't mean anything, because at the end of the day, If they have to cut you in a minute, they'll do it. So just understand that. Someone asked, "How do I get my foot in the door in the HR field without having any experience or education?" I really can't answer that question. I don't know how you would, and I'm not sure why you would think that you should do that. If you don't have any experience or education, you need to get some education at a minimum. There are courses you can take. You can join. What is that association? There are a couple associations for HR. Used to belong to one of them. SHRM is one because SHRM has courses that you can take. Um, but I don't. The last thing HR needs is any more people that don't know anything about HR being in HR. That's like a big pet peeve of mine. It doesn't need any more people that don't know what they're doing. And learning on the job is not ideal because you're learning at other people's expense. So I suggest you get some experience first by taking some courses at least, and at least showing some initiative that you joined SHRM and that you took some courses and you went and educated yourself first, and then you can at least apply for a job and in your letter explain the things that you did to gain knowledge and information to apply for the job, but don't apply for a job and have no education and no experience, and this just expect someone to hire you and teach you on the job. And some places will do that, but then the employees are the ones that suffer as a result. So I don't recommend that. That you're welcome, Nix Dell. I appreciate that. Where in the Caribbean are you? The film Elysium has the same premise. Earth was dystopian. I'll have to check that one out. I love watching stuff like that because I just thought when I was watching it, I just thought, wow, this is the direction in which you are going. This is the direction in which society is going because we're allowing people just on account of having money. Americans, more than any other group I can think of, deify rich people. They think that because you're rich, you're smarter or better. And most of these people who are rich because their families had money. They had an uncle or somebody that could give them money to invest in some idea that they had. They're not more special than anybody else. And some of them are downright idiotic, but they surround themselves with people who are smart and steal their ideas. Right? So we deify these people, and they don't deserve it. And most of them are not very good people. I don't think anyone that's wildly wealthy is a good person, because the things that people have to do to get rich and keep it, in my opinion, are usually not good things. So I'm not saying all of them are horrible people, but I think people who are super wealthy has stepped on a lot of people to get there. That's just my opinion and my experience from my observations and being around people who are wealthy. And even being around people who are a lot of people who are successful, there's a certain level of arrogance and self-belief you have to be successful, including to be president or any of those kinds of jobs. There's a certain level of hubris and self-belief, um, and arrogance that you have to have. And I don't think that that's bad per se, but there's something that power does to people that is not good. Well, especially when people are surrounded by people that tell them yes all the time and they don't have anyone around to tell them no, right? And so HR in a corporate environment often plays the role of being yes people when really your job, and which is why I didn't last in HR, is that I felt it my job to tell people the things that they didn't want to know, because I felt it was important to not only protecting the company, but to protecting the employees, was to point out to people when an idea that they had was a bad idea that could harm the company, expose it to risk. And people don't always like, people don't like the person that tells them no. So a lot of people, when you come into organizations, and somebody got mad at me on social media recently when I said this. I'm gonna just finish this thought and then I'm gonna stop. I said that if I went into an organization and there were Black women or other women of color who had been there for more than 5 years, I would not trust them. I would give them the side eye. I would think, especially they were in HR, but really in anywhere in executive management, I would not believe that they were going to look out for me as a fellow person of color, a fellow Black person. I would be on my I would be on, looking over my shoulder with those people, because what I have learned about corporate America is that if you are a person who has a moral compass, who has ethics, who speaks up and says something is not right, you're not going to last long. You're definitely not going to last 5 years. That's about as long as you'll probably last. So when I go somewhere and I see someone and they're like, "Oh, I've been here for 10 years and I've been here for 15 years and I worked my way up." I'm always like, "Worked your way up doing what? How many people did you step on? Not only people in general, but people who looked like you. How many people that look like you did you sacrifice to be here for 15 years and 20 years?" I don't trust those people. That's just me. And oh, some of them were mad at me. Some black women were mad at me. But I said what I said and I stand on it because that's my experience. Right now, people will stay for 5 years, leave and go somewhere else, try to do their best there, move and go somewhere else. That was my story, and a lot of other people I know, that's their story, especially black women. We'll go, we'll try to do what we can. Then they start trying to push us out. We leave, we go somewhere else till we finally just say, forget this, and we leave altogether. And usually by 50, 55 time, you're ready to just leave altogether, right? Black people generally, but especially black women. And so, but I don't trust black people, whether it's a black woman, black man, whoever it is. I don't trust you. If you've been there for 10, 15 years and worked your way up and you never left, I want to know who you stepped on to last that long in corporate America. And you the only one, that's the other thing. You the only one or the one of two or something like that, I don't trust you. I don't trust you because we know what it's like to be in those spaces. We know what it's like to be in those spaces. And so when you see someone who managed to stay in them spaces that long, you got to know something ain't right. Oh, Trini. My parents are from Tobago. Um, Altered Carbon, yes. I highly recommend season 1 of Altered Carbon. I didn't care that much. There's only 2 seasons. I didn't care that much for the second season, but I thought the premise of it was clever and the first season was really, really good. Um, I'm just reading the comments. I'm 52 and December is my last day as being someone's employee. Praise the Lord, as my late mother would have said. Congratulations. Congratulations on getting off the plantation. I'm happy for you. The black person in HR is a setup of protection for the company, from my experience. It is. They often will get one of us, turn us into a mascot if we allow it, and and trot us out to justify all the horrible things that they do, and trot us out when someone that looks like us makes a complaint or raises a concern. That's what they'll try to do. So, and if you don't want to be a mascot, you're not going to last very long. I'm just saying. So when people are there, plus 5 years, after 5 years, and they're still there, and then you come in and I'm like, and they're all proud to tell you, I've been here for 10 years, I've been here for 15 years. I'm just like, that tells me that I have to watch my back with that person. That was just my experience, but that's just me. But I don't think I'm wrong. So I'm sorry if that offends anybody, but that was my experience. I've been stuck in my position 9 years, fighting for the good fight, none of the better for it. Miss, you just ran down my whole work history in the company. I just say what I know. I don't know everything, but I know what I know. I know what I know. So, you know, I wasn't cut out to be anybody's mascot. So I never really lasted anywhere. But my first job, which is the one where they had to pay me because that black woman was up there playing, was the only place I was for 9 years, and the reason I was there that long was for 7 of those 9 years, I had the best manager in the ever, and he's still my mentor to this day. And when he retired, all hell broke loose because they gave his job to that woman, and all hell broke loose. But I'm glad. I mean, I thank God every day that woman came along, because I would have stayed in that job forever because I was comfortable. I could have done the job in my sleep. He was the best boss. He let me, be me. He let me grow. He let me take on responsibility. I had a great team. It was a great 7-year run. But after he retired, you know, Jesus was like, it's time for you to go do something else. And I wouldn't be who I am now or have the life I have now if I had stayed in that place all that time. So I'm glad in the long term that it happened, because it was, I wouldn't even be doing this work if it wasn't for that woman. So thank you. Thank you for being such a piece of shit. Thank you. Um, but that's how I learned that you can't trust people, and just because someone looks like you. And this one was a black woman, and I really looked up for to her when she was my colleague. But when she became my boss, she was horrible. So it's just one of those things. But I learned that early in my career. I learned that in my late 20s. And I never forgot that lesson. And so I know that if somebody's been in a company for um 10 plus years. I'm not saying all of them are going to be horrible, but I am saying the majority of them. And I'm just saying I wouldn't turn my back on that person. And that would not be the person to whom I went and confided about my problems or issues in my workplace. Right. And I honestly don't think you should ever go to HR and confide in anybody in HR about any of those things, because they are not going to put you ahead of their job. Right. I don't care what they tell you. Right? Talk to Jesus, tell it to your friends, write it down in a journal. Don't go just because the lady in HR is cool and funny, she's not your friend, she's HR. But those people who've been in these companies for 10, 12, 14, 15, 20 years, I don't care if they're black, I don't care if they're brown. I just don't believe that they can be trusted, and that is my opinion. So anyway, that is, can HR do that for this month of November? Thanksgiving is coming up next year. I really hope that you guys, if you celebrate Thanksgiving, I don't want to assume that everyone does, but I love Thanksgiving. So it's my favorite holiday of all holidays. It's my favorite. And because it's, for me, it's a holiday where you get to just go and be with your family and be thankful for what you have, and nobody wants anything from you. Christmas always is a different story, but I always enjoyed Thanksgiving. So I'm very looking forward to, being with my family and seeing my family. And I hope all of you will be with people that you care about and people that care about you. And that's not always your family. But I hope you get to spend Thanksgiving Day with people that you love, people that you care about, who love and care about you, and that every one of us has something to be grateful and thankful for. So I hope that you will spend some time being grateful and thankful for whatever it is that you have, even if it may not be everything that you want. So I hope that this was helpful. Thank you guys for joining. I hope that my thoughts on here were helpful and that the answers to the questions were helpful to you guys. And I will see you hopefully next month for another Can HR Do That? And I will also see you guys in the next video really soon. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye.